Citizens of Wyndham, the army is here to help and protect you. Trust us and help us to help you. Follow the protocol.
Is Atomfall just another Fallout wannabe, or does it have some new tricks up its radioactive sleeves? Let's find out, shall we? Atomfall is set in a fictional quarantine zone 5 years after the very real Windscale nuclear disaster of 1957, in which a nuclear reactor caught fire, releasing copious amounts of radioactive material into the northern English countryside. At the time, the disaster was the worst nuclear accident the world had seen. Subsequently, it's been soundly beaten in nuclear catastrophe top trumps by Chernobyl. You play as an amnesiac wanderer trying to piece together who you are and what happened to cause the state of affairs you find yourself in, with the ultimate goal of trying to escape the quarantine zone. And that's about all I can tell you in the interests of staying spoiler free. The story does open a bit as you continue your quest through the Lake District, and it throws a few twists and turns here and there, but nothing you won't have encountered before. Although the story isn't blindingly original, it certainly gets you intrigued about what is going on and provides good motivation to explore and dig deeper.
We imprison strangers at the first whiff of trouble, but you can keep your liberties for now.
Graphically, Atomfall is a lovely game to look at. Its lush representation of the English countryside has been realised well, and as someone who lives in the English countryside, it made me feel right at home. There are maybe slightly more mutants where I live though. The graphics tread a fine line between realism and the fantastical. While quaint English cottages are a staple, they rub up against the grimy, almost medieval encampments of cultists, which are also juxtaposed against the futuristic robots marching about the place, giving the game a real mixture of styles. It works really well. There's always something interesting to feast your eyes on. My only complaint here is a lack of variety in some of the buildings and the derelict cars strewn about the place. Asset reuse can be obvious at times. Textures are pretty good. Some don't do as well under close scrutiny, but generally they're sharp. There's some good use of light and shadow, and draw distances are fine. I don't remember seeing any noticeable pop-in. Character models are also pretty good. You can see good effort has been made to make NPCs interesting and quirky. Facial animations are a little stiff in places, with lip syncing being passable rather than memorable, but it won't ruin your experience. Again, my only real gripe on the character model front is that there is a lack of variety in the human enemies. Among the various factions you see the same 2 or 3 enemy types quite often. It's not a major issue, but can break immersion a bit when you enter into a fight with identical triplets. Maybe it's the radiation, who knows. Performance was excellent through my time with the game. Whether I was jogging through the more populated village of Wyndham or stalking through vegetation in the hills and dales, frame rates remained solid, as did frame pacing. For a game with such a good level of graphical fidelity, it's refreshing to see it run so well. One thing that was noticeably absent in my playthrough was bugs. On the PC version of the game, not once did I fall through the landscape, not once did an enemy poke their head through a solid wall. It was really nice to play a game that was complete, tested and polished. Well done, Rebellion. I really enjoyed the art direction on display here. The Apocalypse meets Last of the Summer Wine is a real clash on paper, but works beautifully here. It makes a real change from the urban sprawl most commonly seen in games set after a breakdown in society like this. I do feel, however, that the devs played on the safe side when it came to the whole Britishness of the game. There are pointers at Brit culture, the cricket pad wearing goons and the tea and Cornish pasty food items are a nice touch, but as a Brit I would have liked to have seen the game lean into the eccentric British ways and dry humour a bit more. But hey, I get it, the game will be played worldwide and too much of a focus on an alien culture may be off-putting to some. If you are from a country outside the UK and you're baffled by any of the references in the game, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to translate for you. The visuals are generally a delight in Atomfall. The retro futuristic art style is well implemented and gives the game a charm and character to call its own. With a slight lack in variety and some evident asset reuse dragging the score down a touch, graphics scores 23 out of 25.
Welcome. Right, I've got a quick question for you. It might seem a bit blunt, but I've learned to avoid confusion later. You're not going to try and kill me, are you?
Atomfall is a first-person survival investigation game with some light RPG mechanics. It's set in a semi-open world reimagining of the northern English county of Cumbria. You make your way around the decent-sized maps on foot, which are joined together by Wyndham Village, acting as a kind of hub area. Exploration usually rewards with hidden areas or caches for you to uncover with your metal detector. You don't have to travel far before finding something of interest or vital for completing a mission. When the game first teased, inevitable comparisons were made to the Fallout series, but the game is not overly Fallout-like in nature. It leans much more into its investigation system. As a typical amnesiac main protagonist, you're tasked with piecing together how you have ended up in the quarantine zone and what happened at the Windscale nuclear plant. This is done in the form of leads, essentially clues as to where you should go and who you should talk to. These leads mainly take the form of discarded notes that have been passed from one character to another. The abundance of written notes is neatly accounted for in the story by the fact that all normal forms of communication have been disrupted by the strange goings-on at the nuclear power plant. Radios don't work, and neither do the phones, with the exception of the spookily operational red phone boxes dotted around the map. These phones randomly ring, and a sinister sounding voice plants seeds of doubt in your head, throwing your once certain conclusions into turmoil. The inhabitants also seem to be quite adept cartographers, often leaving some useful map coordinates in their messages. I guess being stranded in a quarantine zone has made them more resourceful than your average 1960s British citizen. I really like this system of investigation. It felt like your missions were being filled out organically rather than the typical go there, do that structure seen in most games. You get to piece the mission together bit by bit, often unearthing strands of another investigation at the same time. This system is a big chunk of the game, so it's great it works so well. When you're not doing your best Sherlock Holmes impression, you'll be fighting the various nefarious inhabitants, the bulk of which are human types like outlaws or cultists, or maybe if you're feeling brave, you'll take on the more heavily armed Protocol, the name given to the military peacekeepers in the region. There are primarily two ways to fight, melee or gunplay. There's a small selection of guns available here. A handgun or trusty rifle will probably make up most players' early game arsenal, progressing on to some more meaty SMG options as you get further into the game. Gun handling is quite satisfying. We aren't talking simulation levels of accuracy here, but there is a bit of movement when aiming and some recoil to deal with, adding to the challenge of using your firearms. To round off your offensive arsenal, you can also use a selection of throwables. Homemade Molotovs, now bombs and grenades are pretty effective for crowd control. Melee is a bit more simplistic. Pick a bladed or blunt weapon and swing away until the thing in front of you stops moving. There is a fair selection of melee weapons to use, but they all basically operate in the same way. It's still fun, however, but it is slightly OP. On a few occasions I ran headfirst into a group of gun-wielding enemies, wildly swinging my cricket bat and came out on top. This does expose a bit of ropey enemy AI, as they don't seem overly willing to prevent their skulls being caved in. Enemy AI seems to be more optimal when at a distance. Your foes detect you from a country mile away, and they all went to Specsavers as there is nothing wrong with their aim. If you don't fancy a full frontal assault on your opponents, you can fall back on the stealth option. You can go into a crouch and use some of the long grass patches to conceal you, stalk down your foes and strike. Stealth is a little undercooked. I would have liked to utilise it more, but with only one weather system and no day-night cycle to hide you, stealth often turned into a full-blown firefight or impromptu cricket match. One of the things I did like about the combat was the fact that you get something of a choice whether you engage or not. Most enemies will warn you off, giving you a chance to walk on by or run away if you're underprepared or under-resourced. It's a nice way of cutting frustration. Dying over and over is not so much fun, so a way to avoid that is a welcome addition. The combat in Atomfall gives you all the tools you need to create your own fun. Working out how to navigate a highly populated area can be quite strategic. There's nothing particularly new here, but what is here is solid and good fun. To help you progress through the game, Atomfall opts for a perk system rather than a levelling mechanic. Collecting training stimulants found through the world will let you buy these perks. They range from light uplifts in your abilities, improving things like your health bar, to more juicy stuff like being able to upgrade firearms for better aim and power. The crafting system offers the ability to collect recipes and utilise the bits and bobs you find on your travels to craft items for restoring health, giving combat buffs, or making throwable bombs of some kind or another. In addition to finding this stuff, you can also trade with the NPCs you come across. There is no currency, so collecting as much stuff as you can carry, which sadly isn't much, comes in handy. Traders will have certain things they prefer. For example, someone may place greater emphasis on health items, so will accept less stuff to make a trade with you if you offer healing items. It's a great system and ties in with the quarantine zone part of the story. Money would become rather meaningless if no one can get in and no one can get out. All these auxiliary game mechanics in Atomfall share a common theme. They have been distilled down into simple to learn and use systems that require next to no donkey work. Crafting is just a case of visiting the crafting menu and making a predetermined item you have the recipe for. There's no visiting a dozen different crafting benches, there's no XP, so no decision what type of character you're going to build, and no fretting over what attribute you should focus on. Now don't get me wrong, I like and enjoy these big in-depth systems that some games implement with regards to crafting and progression, but it just feels refreshing here to be able to accomplish some stuff with a minimum of fuss. There is definitely room for games with big detailed systems and games with more streamlined systems to coexist. I didn't feel I was being robbed of too much depth here, I just felt like my time was being respected. Atomfall is an interesting mix of investigative snooping, simple but fun combat, supported by some smooth complementary game systems, all set in a world that focuses more on stuff to do and see rather than sheer size. It gives you the feel of the Fallouts and Stalkers of this world while being its own thing, and scores 23 out of 25 for gameplay. Sadly, Atomfall is a bit light on the music front. There are a few tunes here and there, but you mainly explore and investigate in silence. There is some mood music that ramps up when you enter combat and gently concludes when the danger has been neutralised. But other than that, music is confined to the background music found on gramophones that sit in most of the houses that are still standing. These crackling music machines pump out some Northern English folky inspired ditties, which frankly become a bit irritating as you hear the same tune a lot. After a while you find yourself turning off gramophones quite a bit. Sound effects partially make up for the lack of music. The sound of the wind whistling over open land, trickling streams and birdsong are all well implemented and give the game a lonely, desolate feel. Guns have a satisfying weight to their shooting and reloading sounds. However, one sound effect I could have done without was the incessant whistling of enemies. I get it, it's a way of letting you know an enemy is near, but boy do I wish they had used a few more of the alternate ways. Maybe some more general chatter, singing to themselves, etc. would have broken the monotony of these professional whistlers. Thankfully though, the voice acting is a redeeming quality of the sound package on offer here. Just about all the voice work was really good. The voice artists got into their roles and played their parts convincingly. They really helped build the atmosphere of this isolated place where trust and resources are low. The good voice acting somewhat salvages the damage done by the lack of a memorable soundtrack and some annoying choices regarding enemy presence. I can't help but think there is a missed opportunity here. Some decent music would have helped the world building and atmosphere no end. As it stands, it's sufficient and scores 21 out of 25.
You know, I must say, it's nice to talk to someone. Someone who's properly here, that is. Not just a voice in my head.
Atomfall will keep you busy for somewhere between 15 to 40 hours. If you zip through the main plot without touching any side leads, then you should see the credits at around the 15-hour mark. However, take your time and do all that's necessary to see all the endings, and you will be looking at that 40-hour zone. There are a few different difficulties to play on. I started out on the survivor setting, which is equivalent to medium, and found it to present a fair challenge. I died on occasion when overwhelmed, but didn't find things unmanageable. I think the vast majority of players will be absolutely fine at this level. The top setting of difficulty is Veteran. Enemies are tougher and more accurate, you have lower levels of health, items and ammo are much more scarce, and traders will barter much harder for essentials. I feel this setting is the only one that really taps into this being a survival game. On all the other difficulties, healing items and ammo are much less of a concern. If none of the presets appeal to you, you can individually tweak the difficulty for combat, survival and exploration, giving you loads of scope to challenge yourself in particular areas. At the moment there's no New Game Plus mode, but there is a healthy chunk of content here. There are a ton of main and side leads to follow. There are some collectibles in the form of comics and lunchboxes, lots of secret areas to uncover, and upping your abilities takes training stimulants, and finding them all to open all your perks will take some time. There's plenty to do and see here if you like getting your money's worth. Value scores 22 out of 25.
New faces often mean trouble. And yet, they may bring new opportunities too.
I was excited when I first saw Atomfall. Fallout in the English countryside, what's not to like? But now I've had my hands on the game, it's revealed itself to be so much more than a Fallout wannabe. The excellent investigation system had me absorbed from the start. Its more streamlined take on progression makes for a refreshing change, and its nod towards this mad isle I call home is nice to see. The game does have a few drawbacks. The underwhelming soundtrack and some dopey enemy AI pull the score down, but what is on offer here is a characterful mix of genres that mostly succeeds in its aims. It's good to see a new IP get off to such a positive start. Atomfall gets an overall score of 89 out of 100.